They cut me out, erased me like I never existed. But then it happened. I stumbled on that old tape, her voice crackling through the static, saying my name with the warmth of a summer day. Suddenly, their betrayal wasn't the end. Grandma, it seemed, had left me something after all. The cassette trembled in my grasp, its plastic edges cutting into my skin. In the dim, suffocating silence of my room, each breath felt like pulling shards of glass into my lungs. Betrayal soaked through me like cold rain. My name, erased from her legacy, left a hollow gnawing in my chest. Years of devotion to my grandmother, reduced to whispers lost in a void. Her voice, trapped in that frail tape, was the only tether to truth I had left. It was supposed to be my sanctuary, a living testament beyond what could be rewritten or ignored. My family had turned me into a specter, but I needed her voice to lead me back. I pressed play, fingers rigid and unyielding, as her voice crackled to life, promising to reveal whether there was still hope, or just echoes of a world I barely recognized. The moon slants a thin beam through the curtain crack, casting awkward shadows that stretch across my childhood room. Time's passed, but it feels the same. Dust clings to the corners like old secrets. I sit cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by boxes that whisper of a past packed away too hastily. Each lid I pry open creaks protest, an echo of what's been silenced too long. My fingers tremble as they sift through brittle paper and forgotten knickknacks, the air thick with an unfamiliar scent, a mix of mothballs and worn-out regret. I reach for a leather-bound diary, pages yellowed and curls tinted by age, and push it aside with more force than intended. It thuds against the wall, a dull judgment in the quiet. I suck in a breath, as if the house itself might hear and scold me. Then, like a whisper, it appears beneath a pile of faded photographs, a cassette tape. Just ordinary, really, except for the emotion twisting my gut as I lift it out. The label's almost erased, but there it is in my grandmother's sprawling hand. GMA, August 99. I rub my thumb against those words, her touch lingering, pulling me back into memories both cherished and tainted. Her last summer. Her last wish. Or so I'd hoped. Outside, the wind taps branches against the window, a soft percussion to my mounting anticipation. I fumble for the old tape recorder I'd stashed in the neighboring box. My heart pounds louder than any old cassette clatter, a mismatched rhythm. Betrayal can do that, transform the familiar into something unsteady, edging on sinister. I pause, the cassette poised between fingers that won't stop shaking. What if it says nothing? What if it says everything? The uncertainty coils tight, and I remember her voice, a wispy whisper through the phone, the forced bravado at family gatherings. She'd always wanted the best for us, for everyone. But they'd twisted her words. They'd taken everything and twisted it until what was left echoed of greed and lies. I slide the tape in, my breath hitching as I press play. The mechanical clinks mesh with the blood surging in my ears. For a moment, there's only static. My eyes close against the betrayal simmering under my skin, sears pooling at the edges as I lean forward, desperate to catch every possible nuance of her voice. The scratchy sound clears, and then her voice. Low, gentle, painfully familiar. If you're hearing this, it begins, and I'm transported. To sunlit afternoons, her lap a haven, stories weaving our worlds together. Her voice trembles, mirrors how mine fails me now. Remember, this was for you, she says, and hope so fragile, so fierce, flares within my chest. I clutch the recorder as if it's a lifeline thrown into wild seas, her words washing over the doubts, seeking clarity, seeking truth. I remember sitting on the edge of her floral-patterned couch, the sunlight streaming through lace curtains and casting whimsical patterns across the faded living room carpet. Grandma had a way of holding time still, as if the ticking clocks didn't dare break the reverie of moments we shared. Her hands, those frail, bird-boned hands, knotted like the old trees in her garden, threaded through my hair with a care I hadn't felt from anyone else. Such a good heart, she would say, her voice soft yet holding the weight of a lifetime of wisdom. You're a part of me, always. You'll always be part of my legacy, dear one. I could still feel her words wrapped around me like a warm shawl on a biting winter day, especially on the lonely nights when my thoughts wandered back to those moments, allowing nostalgia to briefly drown out the sharp edges of my heartache. Her presence was my constant, as steadfast as the big oaks outside her window. I was more at home in that aging house, with its creaky wooden floors and the comforting whiff of lavender, than I ever was anywhere else. It was there, in the glow of her soft-spoken stories, that I learned what love felt like without contingencies or conditions. But now, the specter of that missing name from the will loomed large, an unexpected blade that had sliced through our shared truths. My hands clenched around the armrest as I revisited what had been, and, more painfully, what hadn't. Grandma had always made it clear that family wasn't just about blood, but about the bonds we choose and nurture. I'd grown up basking in those chosen bonds. My place in her heart as undeniable as the view from her back porch, sprawling fields of wildflowers that danced lightly in the breeze. How could she, in her final testament, leave me relegated to silence? I could hear her laughter echo down the hallways, the same one that used to tumble through her chest as we baked cookies, her face smudged with flour, her spirit unburdened even by life's toughest lessons. It was moments like those, intimate and ordinary, that had promised a permanence I naively believed in. Without the security of those promises, each brush of her memory felt like sand slipping between my fingers. The tape was all I had, a slender thread connecting the fragments of my disbelief to the possibility of truth. Its existence whispered that there was something more, something unspoken, waiting to be uncovered, a hope desperately clinging to the soft murmurs of her past reassurances. I sat there, haunted by the quiet of the room, feeling the weight of loss not just of Grandma, but perhaps of what I understood as her love for me. I needed to hear her voice, her intention, preserved in that tape. Only then might the shroud of betrayal lift, granting me clarity and maybe even a taste of redemption from the gripping shadows. The weight of the cassette tape in my hand is both anchor and ammunition, its plastic edges sharp against my skin, digging in as if to remind me, persist, hold strong. The living room seems to shrink around me, and each step feels like treading deeper into quicksand. The air is thick with the scent of coffee mixed with the faint mildew of forgotten corners, the familiarity of it all oppressive. My parents sit at the kitchen table, their figures casting long, ominous shadows in the dying light of day. I stand at the threshold, the tape clutched tightly, pulse matched to its steady beat. They glance up as one, eyes meeting mine for the briefest moment before flicking away, their lips sour in identical frowns. My father coughs, habitual, dismissive, then burrows his face back into the folds of the newspaper. My mother, statuesque and brittle as porcelain, regards her glass of red wine as if searching for hidden truths within its depths. I swallow hard, the words thick and cloying in my throat. When I finally speak, my voice is smaller, more vulnerable than I'd imagined, a child calling out from the wilderness of their neglect. We need to talk about what's on this tape. A statement, not a question. My mother's eyes lift, steady and unreadable. Oh honey, not this again, she says, each word dripping with diplomatic fatigue, as if tested to perfection on countless previous occasions. You've misunderstood. Yeah, forgot it like the others, my father adds, the newspaper folding like a judge's gavel. My insides coil tighter, frustration boiling beneath the surface. It's the truth, I insist, though doubt starts to needle beneath the layers of my resolve. My voice trembles against their arrogance, seeking some impossible validation. This tape is all I have left of the truth, and your eyes refuse to meet mine. A brittle laugh escapes my mother, sharp and ice-cold. My dear, we did what we thought was best for you. These little fantasies. It does no good clinging onto them. There's a steely edge now that makes its way into my tone, slicing through my initial hesitation. Listen to it, I plead, or is it demand? The possibility of it slipping away too much to bear. Just listen, then tell me I'm wrong. My father's sigh could have filled a silent scream. Enough. You're acting like a child. The room seems to tilt, voices ricocheting off the walls, multiplying in intensity. I imagine the tape unraveling, spilling its confessions to the wind, lost forever in the cavern between us. Their faces are closed books, tomes in an unreadable language I once thought I understood. This confrontation, this clash of flesh and blood, leaves me gutted. Yet I grip the tape harder, the edges biting back through my skin, more determined than ever to pry those pages open or tear them apart altogether. The drive felt longer than it should, every second in that cramped car stretching like elastic pulled too tight, ready to snap back and hurt me. I swallowed the 100 questions gnawing at my insides, the ones that made the air seem thicker, tinged with that familiar tang of desperation. I needed this to be right. I needed them to remember. Pulling up to the house, I cut the engine, sitting there for a moment longer than necessary, hands wrapped around the steering wheel like it might start rolling down the steep hill if I let go. I forced a breath out, watching my reflection in the rearview mirror, I shadowed by something I'd rather not name. The car's fabric seat felt coarse beneath me, grounding me in this reality that still felt half-formed, a bridge between hope and what felt like impending disappointment. As I knocked, the hollow sound echoed around me, a question mark hanging in the air. This door was a portal to my past, one that might just hold the answer, the affirmation I was so desperately searching for. The creak of the door dragged on like a vinyl scratch, revealing Mrs. Crawford standing in the dim light. Her eyes found mine, crinkling at the edges with age and recognition, A tiny flutter of relief whispered inside me. "Oh, it's you, dear," she said, voice warm yet tinged with a hint of surprise. It was the kind of voice that had narrated my childhood sleepovers, filled cups with hot cocoa, and tucked me in under worn quilts that smelled of lavender and faded line-dried fabric. Stepping inside, familiar scents enveloped me: cinnamon, old books, and something indistinct yet homey. My presence seemed to stir the air with nostalgia, a touch of the past reawakening as I followed her to the small, round kitchen table. Mrs. Crawford moved slowly, but her actions were deliberate, measured, as if she knew that every movement carried weight. Sitting down, every creak of the chair merging with my heartbeat, I let out a shaky breath. "Mrs. Crawford, I hope you can help me. I need you to remember something from when Nana was." My voice stumbled, clogged with hope. "Please, tell me you remember. Tell me she mentioned me those last months." Her face, a tapestry of days gone by, shifted into a thoughtful frown. She paused, her eyes widening slightly as if touching the edges of recollection. "Your grandmother. She spoke of you often, even as her memory started to fade. Dear. She was proud. She always said you were different, special." There was a heaviness in the room, an unspoken understanding that rippled between us, and I realized my fingers had curled around the edge of the table. I released them, letting the tension seep out. Her words were like a balm, soothing the raw edges of doubt that had begun to fray. I nodded, the knot in my chest loosening slightly, enough to let a sliver of hope seep in. "Thank you," I whispered, barely audible but sincere, the two words carrying more than just gratitude. They were a beacon, and I clung to them, feeling not just the possibility of support, but the gentle shift of alliance forming in the shadows of my troubled path. Her voice crackled, each word a rosary bead that I clung to in this relentless night. The tape rolled on. I clutched the remote as if it were my only tether to reality, rewinding, listening, seeking. Desperation clung to me like a shroud. Each playback offered no new revelation, but I couldn't stop, couldn't let go. The ancient cassette player wheezed softly, maintaining its mechanical rhythm, while my thoughts spiraled beyond reason. Grandma's words were etched deeply now, her voice a half-remembered lullaby distorted with age. "You come from strong women," she had said, her tone imbued with the gravity of long-held secrets. Yet what secrets? The puzzle pieces never quite fit, the picture always slightly askew. Fingers trembling, I hit rewind again, the comforting whir and click taking me back. Beneath her faded phrases, I searched for whispers, for shadows hidden in plain sight. Each nuance mattered. Each exhalation, potential prophecy. The room around me faded into obscurity, consumed by the flickering static glow of the small, worn television screen. My eyes were gritty, burning, each blink a heavy reminder I've slept so little. Darkness pressed against the windows, a living thing, uninvited and intimate. Yet the whispering tape was more vital, more visceral, than any respite sleep might offer. Cracks in the audio became fault lines in my sanity. Why couldn't I hear it, whatever truth lurked just out of reach? Frustration clawed inside me, cold as my conviction that something essential lay dormant within these moments. "Strong women," I repeated aloud, taste-testing the texture of her words. Voice thick with hoarseness, I closed my eyes, harnessing the images that these syllables conjured. Battle-worn, resilient souls, shadows echoing through our family history. I was one of them, wasn't I? Validated by her voice? Click. Rewind. Play. The obsession had roots, buried deep in the long-ago summers spent at her feet, stories wrapped in her embrace. Now, it was all I had, this whirring lifeline, a tether to past and purpose. Yet time kept leaking through my fingers, eroding certainty. Every second counted now, the edges of sanity closing in. Had I invented a ghost to chase, one that existed only in the spaces between the words? The stress bore down. Still, I delved deeper, gossamer threads of hope tying me to this unraveling pursuit. Another sharp inhale, another flash of resolve. I couldn't fail, not when so many pieces connected my life to hers. My identity hung in the balance. It had to be here somewhere. It had to, otherwise, what had the nights meant? Weariness weighed me down as the tape concluded once more with a click, persistent pause echoing. My eyes fixed on the player, dry and unblinking. But surrender wasn't an option. Not yet. I pressed play once more, her voice crackling to life in the darkness. The laughter of my family floated through the living room, a cacophony of interwoven stories and clinking glasses. I dared not breathe. The tape lay in my hand, a Pandora's box of truths sealed in a brittle plastic casing. It wasn't supposed to be here, not now, not in this sacred cocoon of ignorance we called a family gathering. But sometimes, even the steadiest of hands slip. I fumbled. The tape clacked and rolled across the floor, its trajectory a silent accusation ending at the feet of my father. "Hey, what's this?" My cousin's voice sliced through the chatter as she picked it up, a bemused smile playing on her lips. Before I could reach out, her curiosity took charge, and the tape was spirited towards the stereo nestled in the corner behind a flickering lamp. "No, wait." My protest was lost to the sound of the tape sliding into the player, a mocking click sealing its fate. Time compressed, the room narrowing into brief glimpses of shocked faces and the low hum of interference as the machine whirred to life. Every heartbeat thudded in sync with the mechanical advance of the tape. And then her voice, chilly, disembodied, spilled into the room, reciting secrets soaked in shame. Every pause in her speech echoed louder than the murmurs of the crowd, fingers pointed at the silent betrayal. The air thinned as if siphoned from the room. I watched my mother close her eyes, her serenity fracturing. My father's jaw tightened, and his eyes, oh God, his eyes, were glassy mirrors of disbelief and something sharper, a pride dismantled before the world. Each whispered confession from the tape hung between us, tangible, exposing the fragile lattice of lies that held us together. I was anchored to the spot, foreign in my own skin, while the tape unspooled their betrayals, my betrayals, into the light. Around me, guests exchanged glances of suppressed horror. Some leaned in closer as though proximity might align them with the truth unfolding in dissonant clarity. My skin prickled under their scrutiny, heat pooling in my cheeks and tugging my eyes to the ground. The voice on the tape, my voice, continued its unrelenting litany. Words spoken in moments I thought were private smashed through the fabric of our gathering like stones through glass. I felt exposed, like a live wire strip bare, sparking in the open air. Someone switched off the player, yet the residual echo lingered, a haunting silence punctuating the devastation. My parents' faces were a study in contrasts, my mother's worn lines sagging with defeat, while my father seethed under the surface like a dormant volcano, calculating the detonation. My heart lodged itself in my throat, my lungs constricting with every inconclusive beat of expectant silence from those around us. Suspense hung like a guillotine, ready to sever what little remained of our unity. I waited for acknowledgement or denial, a breath held in the collective throat of my family. Rain smacked against the windows like Mother Nature herself was trying to drown out our screams. The room was tense and dim, shadows elongating with each flash of lightning. I stood in the doorway, feeling the storm inside our house mirrored by the one outside, driven by forces none of us truly understood. "You always thought you were better than us," spat my brother, his face tight with 1,000 unspoken grievances. His words were like shards of glass, nicking old wounds I thought had scarred over. I had no smart response, no quip to throw back. I just stood there, helpless under the weight of his hatred, as layers of our family's facade began to peel away. "I've never known where I stand with you," my voice cracked, a strange betrayal of the calm I tried to project. In my heart, I felt a familiar ache, as if an old wound had suddenly started to bleed again. The silence between our words was thunderous, filled with the echoes of a lifetime of pretenses. Dad's voice cut through, deep and resonant, tinged with an anger I hadn't heard in years. "You think you're the only one who's suffered? You have no idea what this family has sacrificed to keep you all afloat." His eyes were wild, pleading with someone, anyone, to understand the weight he bore alone. His words hung in the air, filled with truths we'd ignored for too long. The room felt smaller, suffocating, like the intervening years had all swelled back into this one volcanic moment. The past clawed at the present as Mom spoke, her voice barely above a whisper but cutting through the tension like a blade. "Your father, he did what he thought was best. It's not easy carrying burdens you never wanted." In their shouting, I heard the crack of every unspoken word, like thunder under an unyielding sky. My heart pounded with the force of everything left unsaid, streaming through the years like an unstoppable flood. Aunt Linda's voice was tremulous but defiant. "Secrets never remain buried forever," she said, a cryptic whisper that sent shivers down my spine. Her every breath was a dam threatening to break under the pressure of her confession. Lightning snaked through the sky, its illumination casting harsh truths across their faces. Everything felt on the brink of eruption, as if admitting these truths might somehow decimate the fragile structure we called family. Then, suddenly, silence. The eye of our storm. No more words, just breathing, just the rhythm of hearts beaten by age-old rhythms of silence and avoidance. Everything had changed, and yet nothing was different. The house held its breath as if waiting for the final word, a disclosure that once spoken could never be taken back. Through the silence, we all knew the aftermath awaited, quieter but no less severe, with truths laid bare in a room now full of ghosts. Standing there in the silence of our living room, I couldn't help but feel like an uprooted tree. The walls, once echoing with laughter and shared secrets, now felt cold and indifferent. Dust motes danced in the slivers of light streaming through the window, and I watched them with a peculiar detachment, as if they were tiny planets spinning away from a sun that no longer held them captive. Roots exposed, I was aware of the wind, but finally learning to sway with it. Fingers trembling, I traced the edge of the photo frame I clutched, a snapshot of happier times, before everything fractured. A carnival, our smiles wide beneath a sunset sky, faces aglow with the innocence of unspoken promises. I almost wanted to speak to those people in the picture, warn them of the storm looming just beyond the horizon. But these ghosts offered no comfort, only a mirrored reminder of what had been and what could never be again. I set the frame back on the shelf with a hollow resignation. The room felt too still, the quiet pressing in on me like a weight. And in that stillness, I contemplated this idea of family. They say blood is thicker than water, but what happens when blood congeals, turns cold and stagnant? When trust, once as sure as sunrise, disintegrates into shadow, what remains? The familiar sound of the door brought me back to the present. It swung open, flooding the space with a draft of fresh air. I almost expected a voice, a call of greeting, but was met with only the soft rustle of leaves from outside. It was a gentle reminder that life continued its ceaseless march, indifferent to the tiny personal tragedies that littered its path. I moved to close the door, pausing for a moment on the threshold. Outside, the world seemed to breathe anew, birds in the distance, the rustle of branches soft against the sky. I realized it wasn't just the house I was standing in, but a junction between what was past and whatever lay ahead. The symbolism wasn't lost on me as I stood there, caught between leaving one world behind and stepping into the unknown. Loneliness clung to me like a shadow, yet I felt an unexpected lightness growing within. A tender mourning for the family lost, yes, but also a quiet acceptance of what my life had become. The bonds I'd relied upon were gone, but in their absence came a different clarity. Without the tangled roots of broken promises, I'd found a new kind of ground beneath my feet. I closed the door softly, not with finality, but with a gentle acknowledgement. The past might have shaped me, but it no longer defined the direction I chose to walk, a direction that was now, unmistakably, mine alone. The gravel crunched beneath my worn sneakers, and I inhaled the familiar scent of earth and freshly mown grass. Each step felt heavier with the weight of my memories, and as I approached her grave, the wind seemed to carry the sound of her voice in a soft whisper, like the echoes I constantly replayed in my mind. Clutched in my hand was the cassette, its once vibrant label now faded and peeling, a physical embodiment of so many afternoons spent weaving stories with her. I paused at the foot of her grave, taking in the etched inscription that had become so achingly familiar. Her full name, the dates that framed her life, and an eternal sentiment that never seemed enough to capture her essence. The air was cool, almost crisp, but filled with a warmth born of nostalgia. For a moment, I stood in silence, letting the dance of memories take hold. They played out like a cherished reel in my mind. Her laughter, the story she spun, the gentle strength in her hands. Kneeling, I placed the cassette delicately on her gravestone. It felt both heavy and light, a bridge tying together the complexities of love and loss. I thought this belonged here, I murmured, my voice barely trembling. A testament to all that was lost and gained under her unwavering gaze. Alongside it, I drew out the letter I had written with her in mind, its edges creased from being carried too close to my heart. I unfolded it gently, the rustling paper seeming louder than it should be in the tranquil cemetery air. "Dear Grandma," I began to say, almost voicing each word aloud for her alone. The letter spoke of gratitude, regrets, and all the moments I wished I could live again. Times I watched her sew, the patchwork of quilts growing beneath her fingers, afternoons lost within the pages of her books, her voice narrating adventures across seas and skies. I confessed my fears, the uncertainty swirling within me since she had gone. The loss of her steady guidance left me adrift, my compass spinning aimlessly. My throat tightened as I read to the end. "Thank you for loving me even when it seemed I didn't deserve it. I hope you knew how much you meant to me. I hope." The words faltered, but the emotion surged, filling the gaps. I glanced up, eyes lingering over the gravestone, almost expecting to see her there, a shadow cast by the setting sun. The wind picked up slightly, drawing a shiver across my skin as if she were brushing her fingers against my cheek. Placing the letter down, I stood, feeling the pull of gravity lessen, a mix of heaviness and release. As I turned away, the gravel underfoot crunched a familiar rhythm, a soft coda underscoring the goodbye. With each step back towards the world of the living, I felt her presence dissipate gently, sifting into a quiet peace.